At the beginning of the story, a boy named Agnes is seen playing alone in his room. While driving his remote-controlled car, he suddenly feels as if his mother is calling him. Trying to trace the source of the voice, he realizes it's coming from behind the mirror. Just then, his father Luckman calls from downstairs. Luckman lost his wife in an accident, and since then he has been heavily addicted to drugs. Agnes feels that he is responsible for his mother's death, because it happened when she got out of the car to buy him a toy. Luckman tells him, "Never blame yourself for this. No one can change fate. Now go upstairs and get some sleep." But when Agnes insists on staying with his father, Luckman scolds him. Tearfully, Agnes goes upstairs. Thinking of his mother, he looks at her picture as tears stream down his face. On this rainy night, while drawing a picture of her, the antique mirror hanging on the wall suddenly starts shaking. Agnes hears his mother's voice again. Following the sound to the balcony, he becomes hypnotized by the mirror and unknowingly begins reading the inscription carved on it, "When she takes you away for life." As he repeats the words, the head-shaped ornament on the mirror twists around. On the chair in front of him, he sees his mother sitting there. Overjoyed, Agnes runs to her and hugs her tightly, asking, "Are you still angry with me?" He adds, "Father might still be angry, but please forgive me." His mother strokes his head and softly asks, "Do you want to come with me?" When Agnes nods, she suddenly transforms into a terrifying demon. Hearing Agnes's scream, Luckman rushes upstairs, only to find the room empty. Blood stains cover the chair and the mirror, and on the floor lies a torn piece of his son's clothing. The scene shifts to several months later. A group of children at an orphanage is shown, run by Miss Donna. It's been a long time since she has visited her family, so she plans a trip to her home in San Francisco for a few weeks. Before leaving, she hands over all responsibilities to her elder sister Lydia. The children are Punji, Kresna, Dinda, Miko, and little Amber. Lydia has arranged for her boyfriend Glenn to drive Donna to the airport. Among the children, Miko loves reading ghost stories. That day, he is engrossed in a tale about the Kuntilanak, a notorious spirit in Indonesia, also known as the Pontianak. According to local belief, when a woman dies during pregnancy, her soul becomes a Kuntilanak. The creature is feared in rural Indonesia, especially in Jakarta's outskirts. It is said to come for children, particularly those deprived of a mother's love, luring them into another realm. Before leaving, Donna reminds Lydia to take special care of Dinda, as she is new to the orphanage and still struggling to connect with the others. While the other children call Donna Mom, Dinda still calls her Madam. Glenn is supposed to drive Donna, but at the moment he is busy filming a haunted location for his TV horror show Dimensi Austral, where he and his team visit different spooky places to create documentaries. This time, they are covering the episode on Luckman's house, the very house from which Agnes disappeared and was never found. Locals believe the house was haunted by a Kuntilanak. Some claim they have heard a child crying at night from inside the house, while others have heard terrifying screams. After finishing the shoot, Glenn gets a call from Lydia. Since Donna loves antiques, Lydia wants to surprise her with an antique mirror. Glenn had promised to pick one up from the market but forgot. Then his eyes fall on an old, discarded mirror lying in the junk pile outside Luckman's house. Since it looks ancient and valuable, he decides to take it and deliver it to Donna's home in time. To keep it a surprise, he hides the mirror in the storeroom. That night, Donna says goodbye to everyone before her trip. Among them, Amber seems the most saddened by her departure. Later, while Dinda is washing the dishes, she suddenly hears someone calling her name. Looking out the window, she sees a woman standing in the garden. But when she goes outside to check, she finds only a piece of cloth hanging in such a way that it looked like a person from afar. Relieved, she turns to go back inside, only to find a demon following her. Before going to her room, she feels an urge to check the storeroom. Stepping inside, she senses that the mysterious voice is coming from there. Dinda noticed the mirror placed in a corner. She covered it with a white cloth lying in front of it, but as soon as she did, the chair beside it began to move. It wasn't unusual for a chair to move slightly in the wind from outside, but then Dinda saw something far more unsettling. Someone was stepping out from inside the mirror. When strange supernatural things began to happen, Dinda panicked and ran away. She decided not to tell anyone about it. The next night, Amber came alone to Donna's room. She missed Donna terribly, especially the way Donna used to gently clip the red hairpin onto her hair. Seeing Amber standing alone, Dinda went over to keep her company. When Amber asked her to clip the pin onto her hair, Dinda suddenly felt as if someone was standing right behind her. She turned to look, only to freeze in shock. The clip was already fixed neatly in Amber's hair. Dinda couldn't figure out who had done it. Later that night, Dinda awoke to a strange noise. In the dim light, she saw someone who looked exactly like her sitting on the chair, tying her hair, while Amber was nowhere in sight. But the very next moment, she saw both of them back in their places. Approaching the figure on the chair, she was horrified to see that it was herself, but with ghostly white eyes, slowly advancing towards her. Shocked, she realized it had all been a nightmare. She woke up and stepped outside her room, noticing the TV was still on. Apparently, they had fallen asleep without turning it off. She moved to switch it off, but just then, she heard her name being called from the closet behind her. Maybe it was her imagination. But when she turned around, she saw an unfamiliar woman standing in front of the TV, singing in a strange, eerie tune, a melody and language she had never heard before. As Dinda, entranced, stepped closer, the woman turned her face towards her. Dinda gasped. This was no ordinary woman, it was the Kuntilanak herself. The demon began moving toward her, and Dinda screamed, only to wake up again. She realized she had been trapped in a dream within a dream. Meanwhile, in another room, Punji woke up after hearing the sound of something sharp scratching violently. The next morning, everyone discovered deep claw marks on the main door. Lydia assumed it was the children's doing and said she would complain to Donna when she returned. By midday, the children were huddled together, discussing the Kuntilanak. They had heard that the spirit could change the shape of her hands and had razor-sharp nails. They began to suspect that the scratch marks might have been her work. Miko asked everyone, other than Lydia, has anyone seen a strange woman in this house? That's when Dinda finally shared her terrifying experiences from the previous night. The question then arose, could the Kuntilanak be summoned? Miko confidently replied, of course she can, but you have to know the chant. They call it the Dermo Kuntilanak. He added, they say she takes children to a spiritual realm from which there's no return. And even in the rare cases when someone does return, they remember nothing of their past life. That night, everyone gathered to watch Glenn's horror TV show episode about Luckman's house. Miko asked Lydia, this house doesn't seem too far from here, does it? Lydia replied, yes, it's not far at all. You just have to cross the forest, and you'll reach it. After the show ended, everyone went to sleep, but soon, strange things began happening. In Miko's room, someone knocked on the door. The noise woke him, but the others were still asleep. He got up to check and heard a voice outside calling his name. As he moved to close the door, the Kuntilanak suddenly grabbed it from the other side. Miko froze in terror, unable to scream. Then the door slammed shut on its own, but in the next instant, the Kuntilanak appeared behind him and held him tightly. Miko's eyes snapped open. He had been dreaming. Hearing his frightened cry, everyone rushed into the room. Lydia scolded him a little, blaming it on his habit of reading ghost stories before bed. Still, Dinda couldn't shake off her uneasiness. The next day, Glenn came by and took the mirror out of the storeroom, setting it up in Donna's room. Lydia asked him, is the Kuntilanak thing about that house actually true? Glenn replied, from what the locals say, it seems so. In fact, the last episode's ratings were so high that the production company decided to hold a contest. Anyone who can prove the Kuntilanak's presence in that house will be awarded 10 million Indonesian rupiah and invited as a special guest on the show. Miko happened to overhear this. Excited, he told the others, and they all made a plan. They would go to Luckman's house and try to capture a picture of the Kuntilanak. A few days later, Lydia had to go out for work and wouldn't be back until late afternoon. The children chose that day for their Kuntilanak mission. They packed everything they would need and crossed the forest, arriving at the cursed house. Pushing open the creaking door, they found the place in ruins, overgrown with wild plants and tangled banyan tree branches. As they split up to explore, Dinda felt as though someone was calling her. Then her eyes fell on an old book. Inside were newspaper clippings about murders at a boarding school. Flipping through a few pages, she found a picture of the Kuntilanak. Above it, the caption read, only a person with Wangsit can summon the Kuntilanak. Kresna explained, some people have the ability to see or sense spirits. That special gift is called Wangsit. Often, a person doesn't even realize they have it. Dinda thought about all the strange incidents that had been happening to her. Regardless, everyone focused on their goal, to find proof of the Kuntilanak's presence. All they needed was one video or a single photo. Inside the house, many of Anya's and Luckman's belongings were still scattered around. While exploring, Dinda spotted Anya's on the balcony. She followed him into a room, where strange supernatural events began to unfold. She saw clay statues of her friends standing motionless, their necks strangled by banyan tree roots. Then, she saw Anya's. He was holding a picture of a nail and slowly walking toward her. Overwhelmed with fear, Dinda screamed and covered her eyes, only to find that everything was suddenly calm again. Meanwhile, Miko and Kresna entered Anya's bedroom, while Punji wandered into the next room and came face to face with Anya's. Anya showed Punji a drawing. But when Punji noticed Anya's eyes were rolled back, he was gripped by fear. Just then, the others arrived. Seeing a toy car in Punji's hand, they asked, where did you get that? Who gave it to you? Punji replied, Anya's. They froze. How could that be possible? Anya's was already dead. This means you saw a ghost, Miko said. They didn't discuss it further and decided to leave before nightfall. However, back at Anya's house, Luckman was seen keeping a watchful eye. On their way home through the forest, Punji stopped to relieve himself. That's when Luckman appeared from behind and grabbed him. "What were you doing in my house?" Luckman demanded. "Who sent you? Was it the TV crew or the production house?" When Punji didn't answer, Luckman took the red toy car from his bag. But before Luckman could speak, Punji blurted out, "Anya's gave it to me." Luckman was stunned. That would mean Anya's was still alive. "Come with me," Luckman said. "Show me where you saw him." But Punji bit his hand, managed to break free, and ran back to the others. Together, they escaped. That night, Dinda was watching Glenn's footage, interviews with neighbors who suspected the presence of the Kuntilanak in Luckman's house. Some even claimed to have seen it themselves. These accounts made Anya's disappearance seem even more mysterious. From the Kuntilanak book they had taken from Luckman's house, Dinda tried to learn more about Wangsit. Around midnight, Kresna woke up and noticed strange movements in the room. The Kuntilanak appeared and tried to scare him. Meanwhile, little Amber was sleeping in Dona's room. In her dream, she was telling Dona how much she missed her. Suddenly, the mirror on the wall began to shake, and from within, the Kuntilanak emerged, crawling along the floor toward her. When Amber opened her eyes, she saw Dona sitting in front of her. Overjoyed, she hugged her. "I thought you'd never come back," Amber said. "I'll never leave you," Dona replied. "Do you want to come with me?" Amber nodded and hugged her again, only for the Kuntilanak to reveal her true form. Amber's terrified scream echoed through the house. Dinda rushed in, but Amber was gone. All that remained was a torn piece of her clothing on the floor in front of the mirror. Suddenly, the house lights began to flicker. In a brief flash, Dinda saw Amber inside the mirror, and behind her, the Kuntilanak. When Dinda and Kresna told Miko what had happened, they reviewed Glenn's footage and realized the truth. The mirror Glenn had brought into the house was the cursed mirror from Luckman's home. Legend had it that the Kuntilanak could take children through mirrors into a world filled with nothing but endless jungle. As for defeating the Kuntilanak, what little was known was this: you had to drive a large nail into her forehead. And not just anyone could do it, only someone with Wangsit. Suddenly, they heard Punji scream. Rushing over, they found Luckman holding him tightly. Luckman shouted, "What are you doing, bringing my son's belongings along with this cursed mirror into your house? This mirror is the reason my entire family was destroyed." Dinda replied, "It's not just you, we've also fallen into danger." At that moment, a familiar voice came from the other side of the mirror. It was Anya's, calling for his father. Luckman caught a glimpse of him in the reflection and tried to smash the glass, but no matter how hard he struck, it wouldn't break. In the chaos, Luckman suddenly collapsed. The group carried the mirror out to the veranda. But what was the secret behind this mirror that made it so cursed? Miko explained, "It's impossible to kill the Kuntilanak in her own realm. But if she comes out into ours, we might have a chance." With that, they all stood before the mirror and called out to her, saying, "We're Amber's friends, take us with you too." Tempted by greed, the Kuntilanak emerged. Everyone was stunned. Normally, she could only be summoned by the person carrying the Wangsit, yet here she was without it. There was no time to dwell on this. The Kuntilanak's terrifying form was beyond words. With a blood-curdling scream, she grabbed Miko and dragged him away. Meanwhile, Lydia returned home, only for the Kuntilanak to suddenly possess her, attempting to kill Kresna. Lydia was now completely under her control. Glenn arrived just in time, shocked by the scene before him. Now, only Dinda and Kresna could act. Their eyes fell on the inscriptions on the mirror. The strongest one is the master. But no one possessed the Wangsit. Then, Dinda recalled her past encounters, the storeroom incident, seeing the Kuntilanak in front of the TV. All at once, she shouted aloud, "The strongest one is the master." She repeated it again and again, her voice growing louder each time. Suddenly, a large nail loosened from the head of the statue fixed on the mirror's frame. They continued, and soon the Kuntilanak appeared in the mirror, screaming and trying to kill them. In that moment, Dinda seized the nail and drove it straight into the creature's head. With a final, ear-splitting shriek, the demon vanished. Silence fell. Lydia was freed from the possession. A few days later, Dona came back. She learned nothing of what had happened. The children never told her. Before Dona's return, they had already sold the mirror to a shop. And with that, the movie ends.